You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, the Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Christos, and with me today is a full house of Amy, Mark, and Kelvin. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Christos. I am back from my own personal Kobayashi Maru, which is house hunting in the Boston area for a price under $1 million. It's next to impossible, but we will do it. We will do it.
Yes, and I should say, good afternoon, Kelvin.
Good afternoon, my love. I was about to say that myself, just to kind of get the UK time out there. Mark, have you tried reprogramming the computers at the estate agents to make the prices cheaper?
Oh, wait, hold on. Computer says no.
Go on, Captain Kirk.
That was a
you need to install that subroutine.
Oh, we're such nerds. I love it. Well, we have a little bit of news this week, everybody. I guess first and foremost, some very happy news. Prodigy found a new home this week on Netflix.
Yay!
Yeah, that was, I kind of thought that's where it was going to land. So listeners, if you didn't read the news at nauseum this week, season 1 of Prodigy should be popping up on Netflix before the year is over. And in next year, we'll be seeing season 2, which is very much near completion.
To quote Prodigy, pile it on. Pile it on.
Yeah. The ice cream. Yeah.
And Aaron Walkie's already teased a little bit that if it does well on Netflix, we could see a season 3. So
does that mean Netflix will pay for season 3 then, and the development,
or whatever the price is that because Paramount sells the show is technically how that's being done. So if the price is right and Netflix wants it,
it's nice. It feels a little bit like Netflix is getting their own back. The last time I got excited about a new season of Star Trek on Netflix was when Discovery was infamously taken offline the day before and put on Paramount Plus. So it feels nice, a little redemption.
Yeah. I'm a little irritated because I canceled Netflix a long time ago because I think the price for their 4K is egregious. It's like $20 a month pretty much compared to, but everybody else is getting to be closer to Netflix in their price now too. Even Disney Plus is keeps raising the price. So anyways,
I was really happy for this announcement because remember at STLV, we were told it's 99% sure it's a done deal. And so that was the beginning of August. And now here we are, beginning of October, getting things finalized. So I'm like, yep, I totally was at ease. And this announcement just makes me so happy.
Me too. And I think they did the fans, once again, I think did a really good job in true Star Trek fashion between buying Blu-rays of Prodigy and, the petitions and showing the support. And it was I think it was the online chatter. I just,
and buying digital copies.
Yeah. Digital
we know
copies.
How to use a hashtag.
Digital copy. Yeah, we do, don't we? And some other, I feel like it's just turnaround in the Star Trek world. So New York Comic Con is actually still going on as we record. Yesterday, which was Saturday at the time of recording, there was a Star Trek panel. And I'm going to just read a little quote here from Alex Kurtzman. I have to say our friends at Paramount Plus have been unbelievable, truly unbelievable. They have supported all of these shows, well, almost all of these shows, in the most extraordinary ways. I will tease that I did meet with everybody at the top this week, and there's a bunch of new things now in the works, which is really, really exciting. So there's no shortage of support from Paramount Plus for the Star Trek universe. So, and those comments were made outside of Section 31 in Academy. That's other projects are coming, which I mean, we're gonna hope it's Legacy is one of those, or something Legacy adjacent. They went on to say that the writers' rooms for Section 31 and Academy are already restarted, and those are the first projects really going before camera. As soon as well, let me rephrase that. Section 31 is like ready to go before camera, and Academy will start shooting next year, as well as resuming season 3 production on Strange New Worlds.
PC. That quote seems a little bit like someone at Paramount has got a gun to his head saying, "Say that word nice."
Thank you. Can I just talk a little moment about this quote of how supportive Paramount has been? Last week, I had the opportunity to go down to the Paramount Studios to picket with the SAG-AFTRA strikes that's been going on, and how the WGA, that got blown up, and now they're back to the drawing table. And it just really irritates me that, Paramount is being so supportive. They're doing everything they can. Really? Are they paying their actors? Are they giving good contracts to the writers? I know I should be more happy, but I'm not. I'm not happy with this strike and what they're doing. And for him to come out, especially at this time of this feeling of the industry, to just be praising Paramount. I agree with you, Kelvin. This is not a true quote in my book.
It's insensitive.
Maybe you have experience with unions, and I have to do a little bit, but like Paramount just can't pay what they want to pay. They have to go by the collective bargaining agreement that all the studios have agreed to with the union, right? So, I mean, I don't know what Paramount's attitude's been in the negotiation. Maybe if Paramount's been coming to the table willing to move forward with demands and other studios have not, then that's one thing. But if Paramount behind the scenes are being, non-cooperative and wanting to hold back, then I agree with everything you just said. And I don't know what the answer is to that, to be fair. One other little tidbit, production and post-production on Discovery Season 5 is 100% complete. And they said it will be airing in early 2024. That they didn't give us an exact date. They did not give us a proper trailer, but a little bit of news there. And they said it's a tour de force of Sonequa Martin Green's acting, that she's never been better, was said. So
maybe we'll see some range. Like she might cry or something.
She might whisper, because she never does that.
I really hope she saves the day in the end. That'd be original.
How are these two being the snarky ones, and you and I are the voice of reason?
We are on best behavior. We love Sonequa. We love Discovery.
We do.
This is all in good fun, but half truth.
All right. Well, let's move over to the escape pod.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod! Today's escape pod. We're going to be covering season 4, episode 7 of Lower Decks, A Few Badgies More. So 3 computerized villains return to cause problems for the Cerritos crew, and they got them all together, all of the nefarious AIs. So this was a fun episode.
I will go on record that I did not like Agamus. I did not like Peanut Happer. I did not like the episodes that they were in. So this episode, I was like, what? I am not going to like this. And then in the end, I liked it. I think because they finally got I want the utopia. I want everyone happy. I want the happy story ending. So for this to finally come to fruition of, okay, they're going to use their evil powers for good, I'm totally on board with it. So I surprised myself. I really liked it. What did you guys think?
I feel like the whole middle part of the season is just okay. It's not bad. It's not great. And the reason I can tell there's a little bit of an issue for me is I'm not even watching them on Thursday anymore. It's like the priority seems to have left my body, and I'm like, I'll watch it Friday night when I have a little time. And I just feel like they're in this rut of repeating themselves, whether it's Mariner self-deprecating, whether it's falling back on Peanut, Hamper, and Badgie, we keep going back to the same things. And although it's kind of fun, and yes, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I'd like to see them introduce new things instead of keep going back to the same stuff.
So I've been, going back and forth with one of the producers of Lower Decks, and there was a response to this episode posted online that kind of like a little bit hurt his feelings. And I told him, I said, you know what, I'm going to go on and I'm going to do a review myself. And so I watched the episode. I gave myself time. Thursdays are busy. We usually do Cinema Z, but I gave some time on, I think it was Friday, to watch it. And my response was, I loved seeing the Binars again. Peanut Hamper, for once, didn't detract from the episode. Jeffrey Combs, come on. Jeffrey Combs is in it. Heart emoji. Great. I put great story arc for all characters involved, which is true. Like, they're all growing and learning and changing. They're not the same characters from season 1, and that is a good thing. So I appreciate that. I do feel like, though, this episode in particular, they're always meaty because they always get to squeeze, like an hour episode into, 30 minutes or 20 minutes, or however long it is. But this particular episode, it felt like there were 3 plots instead of like 2. In squeezing that into a half hour, it was a bit much. So the episode would have done, I think, better had they had a full hour to explore all the different things. It just felt a little rushed and, compact. My opinion.
To your point, Christos, I like that they're bringing these characters back, because with me, it reminds me of TNG, of a Q episode a season and a Barclay episode a season. So now we're into season 4 and Lower Decks has established itself with its guest stars. I like that we have, the Peanut Hamper episode of the season. And I know you always say that, well, we only get 10, so we shouldn't really be doing too much do-over. But I take comfort in that style of narrative.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, those are all very, very, very fair comments. I just, like, for me, the last time we saw Peanut Hamper, I think we all agreed was the worst episode of Star Trek in years. And then to bring that character back, you're just already coming in with the bad attitude. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to. After that last episode in season 3, I never wanted to see Peanut Hamper again. Honestly, I feel like it's a waste of time. And so it was better this time, to Mark's point. Yes, Peanut Hamper did not annoy the hell out of me. Peanut Hamper actually did get rehabilitated. Go figure, you know what I mean? But yeah, I guess, those are all fair comments, like I said. And I didn't, like I said, to back it up, I didn't say it was bad. I just didn't think it was great.
Did we notice the moving the story along in the who's the baddie, who is this vessel? And I recall a couple of weeks ago, Amy, we were saying on this show about the ships being destroyed, and we were saying, well, what if they weren't being destroyed? And they confirmed that this week, didn't they? They said they're being collected.
Collected, yes.
So what do we think that means? I said the ship did look like Berlinghoff Rasmussen's time ship. So maybe maybe it is him. Maybe he's stealing things.
That would work, yeah.
Or it's the Collectors Guild again. Damn you, Collectors Guild!
Just better not be the damn Packlids.
They've been done.
Yeah.
There's probably a reason they've not been collected.
Yeah.
We take things to make better us.
Yeah, so who would be collecting?
The Collectors Guild.
Yeah, Kivas Farjo.
Okay.
Oh, God. Can you imagine? Yeah.
I'm just trying. Maybe Q? I don't know.
What's Q need with the starship?
Q wouldn't need a ship. Yeah, exactly. He would just take him.
What does God need with the starship?
Yeah. 2 other really positive things I want to point out about the season that I actually like is Freeman has been portrayed as more competent as a captain. I really appreciate that. And even our first officer is like, he's really trying to help Mariner, and you can see that he's a lot more likable as a result. Still narcissistic as ever.
Yeah.
But there's you're kind of, like you said, really kind of rooting for him a little bit more too. So
right. I think with Lower Decks, like we learned their not so desirable traits because it was funny. But you can't hang on that, and have terrible people be in Starfleet. So now we're finally learning their good qualities. And it's like, okay, these characters have substance. And so it's becoming more enjoyable with their character arcs for sure.
Let's get into our main topic here. Amy, do you want to introduce us?
Well, sure. We are continuing our Kobayashi Maru series with part 3, where we are going to discuss a Picard season 3 episode, number 4, No-Win Scenario. Now, this is the one where the Enterprise gets sucked into this gravity well, and the ship is losing power. There's no saving it. What are we going to do? Yeah, that's the episode, if you remember that one.
Yeah, but it was the Titan, Amy, not the Enterprise.
Oh, did I say the Enterprise? Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah.
Well, I knew the Titan.
The Enterprise,
It's a
G.
beautiful
Technically,
ship.
you're both right.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. The good save there, Kelvin. Good there. You're right, Amy. It is the Enterprise ultimately. Well, so just to kind of set this up, this is technically episode 4 of 10 for Star Trek Picard season 3. And I call it out as part 4 because most fans look at the first 4 episodes of Picard season 3 as kind of act 1. So we kind of catch our story already in progress when we get into this episode. And the Titan had been severely damaged at the end of episode 3. So we're actually starting off in the no-win scenario. And I'm also going to point out, because we have a lot to talk about today, at 57 minutes, it's the second longest episode of the season. So I know we all just recently rewatched. It does feel like, doesn't this episode feel like a movie?
Yes, it goes on, and there's so many different parts of the story that is in motion at this point. So we're bouncing around. I remember viewing this and going, oh, there's so much here, so many stories that are going on simultaneously.
Yeah. I kind of pointed out, I was like, I was doing the notes on this, and there's so much drama in this. This is actually, there's less action in this episode until the very end. And it's more, this episode relies on dialogue and drama. And that's probably what makes it so damn good. This is one of my favorite Trek episodes, definitely one of my favorite episodes of Picard. Love this episode for a lot of reasons, but there's a lot of no-win scenarios going on in this episode. It's not just about the overall situation with the Titan and the gravity well. There's, the relationships are kind of in this no-win scenario. So that's going to be kind of the theme of our talk today, listeners, as we're going to talk about what's going on with Picard and Riker, and what's going on with Riker and Troy, and what's going on with Jack and Picard and Sean Picard. There's so much drama happening in all these little pairs, as I'm calling it. And, it's Seven and Shaw. They're having their little dynamic. It's just so much it's such a juicy episode when you watch all these scenes play out. So let's kick it off with kind of the Picard and Riker and Riker and Troy talk. The Picard and Riker thing kind of starts at the end of episode 3 when Admiral Picard is questioning Riker's decision making and kind of pushes Riker, and then we get the portal weapon hits us with 3 torpedoes of our own, and then the Titan effectively becomes disabled, and that's how we kind of lead into this. And then we go down and have that great scene downstairs. So let's talk about that scene.
Did you not feel? I mean, we watched episode 3 on the cruise, didn't we? And it was such a big argument and big cataclysmic end of, get off the bridge, you just killed us all. And as great as the opening scene was, it just felt like, oh, he's got over it really quickly. He really came for Picard at the end of episode 3, and then they just immediately, apologized to each other and had this deep and meaningful. So it seemed like a little bit of a cliffhanger for no reason.
I can relate to that, though. I've had, I guess, arguments with people that I care about deeply, where all of a sudden I see myself going beyond what I should have, and immediately regret it, and then try to rectify the situation. It's like, okay, well, obviously, once Picard left the bridge, Riker sat there for a second and was like, what have I said? What have I done? Like, this is my oldest, dearest friend. Like, I've admired him for years. Like, and then he gathered himself and he went down and apologized. Like, I've been there. I didn't find it that unreasonable.
Okay, I took it differently because, very upset, angry, and what have I done? But I look at it as Riker going to Picard and not apologizing. I mean, the fact that they sort of got back together, that's just showing of their length of their relationship. But Riker's like, all of that aside, we're going to die. You need to know this information so that you can have your peace. Like, that's why Riker went down there. It wasn't to rehash or to call names or to even make up. This is like, I respect you. I love you. We are going to die. You need to know this information because you've been off the bridge.
Yeah. Which that's like almost like a perfect segue into what Riker's thinking. And that kind of informs what's going on with Riker and Troy actually at the same time. Riker is running. Riker is scared. Riker is very damaged about the death of Thad, their first child, which, we learned about in season 1 and saw there, and everything looks great in that episode there in season 1, but we kind of find out that things between Riker and Troy aren't so great. And there's a lot of damage there. And, like I said, Riker is just kind of a shell of himself in some ways. And he's just pessimistic, right? Amy, you just said it there. He's like, we're all going to die.
Yeah. And the fact that the, oh my gosh, what the Titan, what's wrong with me? The fact that the Titan is being sucked in and down and there's no lights and like you look out the view screen or the windows and there's nothing out there. Like the fact that we are in this deep gravity well being pulled even deeper down totally parallels what Riker has been feeling since, right? Thaddeus's death. And the fact that he's been living in this gravity well for so long, like, of course he's going to feel a no-win scenario. Like that parallelism of where the Titan is, of where Riker is. Totally beautifully written. Very well.
Yeah. It very much also has this analogy to like a submarine, right? It's sinking in the water and you just, every second the situation's just getting worse.
Yeah. And I don't think he can't see a way out.
Yeah.
I mean, Riker by himself can't see a way out. He can't see a way out with getting over his own sorrow for the loss of his son. He can't see a way out of getting the Titan out of this situation. Like, he can't find a way out to even send a message to Troy, he's lost in this episode.
I find that it's very apparent just how gone he is when we get to the end of this episode where Picard and Beverly and Jack figure out a way out and they're all excited and they go up to the conference room to have what I will say, listeners, is one of my favorite scenes in Trek because it's so Trek. But they go have this scene. It's kind of like good old days in the observation lounge on the Enterprise D where they're solving the problem. But Riker takes a long time to convince. And he goes as far as saying, at one point, Riker's willing to say it's more important to maybe leave a log so that they can find it and find out what happened to us than actually take a chance at saving themselves. Like you're willing to sacrifice that 1% chance just to leave a message to your wife. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of gone. We do find with the end of this episode, with the Riker stuff, his arc kind of finishes and he is a new man. I will ask our resident Troy expert to give us that commentary on that final conversation between Riker and Troy.
Even though we didn't have a very good, clear picture of Troy, because she was just on a view screen far away, I didn't like that. But you could hear her relief in her voice when she was talking to Riker. Like, that's all we needed to know. And then you see them and they're just chit-chatting, and so this scene sort of backs away, and it's like, okay, there is love and all is good in the Troy home. So it just, you could also hear Riker have this hope. And like when, he's explaining, and then Deanna's like, that is the most beautiful thing that you have said in a very long time. Like, that just encapsulates it. She understands. They are back together. They are Imzadi.
I like the way the screenplay for that scene, or maybe the direction, made it look like he was making the voicemail that he was trying to make at the beginning of the episode. But then as the camera pans around, it's actually a real-time conversation, and Deanna's there. It was so beautiful.
I remember being so excited the first time I saw that episode, and because I like Kelvin, you're right. I totally perceived that he was just finishing his recording, but it actually was a real-time message. I actually did not watch the regular episode this morning. I watched the episode with audio commentary from Terry Matalas, Jonathan Frakes, and Todd Stashwick, and I kind of figured this, but Marina was not in the room when Frakes did his scene. He basically had the assistant director reading the lines to him. So Jonathan Frakes did his performance, not talking to Marina, and also they kind of said that he, as the director, he was so exhausted that it actually played well into that scene because he didn't overact it because he was tired. And it actually brought his tone to a more like the levity of the scene, brought it down a little bit and made it more effective. And just those little things that you get when you listen to an audio commentary. I'm not always a big fan of audio commentaries because they can be stupid sometimes, but I did enjoy listening to that one today and learned a little bit more.
Yes. And before we started recording, I'm like, you told us you were watching the commentary. I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm going to get all these little tidbits of information just like this, listeners. So thank you, Christos.
Yeah. No, like I said, you got to find some ways to make it fun, to collect information and give you that bigger insight. Boy, I'll have some other stuff later, but okay. So that was kind of our topic one. And I think we did that. There's some other things going on here. There's a little bit, we'll talk about Beverly and Jack a little bit. Just a little bit. There's not a lot there. And then we're going to talk more about Jack and Picard. So with Beverly, it's just great to see her problem solving and science-y. And, that whole, we get that, it alludes to it like almost the first time you see Beverly in this episode, that she's on to something with that countdown. The way they did that director thing where they say 7, like 7 of 9. And then it cuts to Beverly going 7, 6. Wow, the editing choices there, that was just really cool.
That's more than coincidence. That it's gotta be. It was so deliberate.
So remember, we just jump in because we're talking about this, like how awesome Beverly is, but she's bringing the biology to the science, and we just talked about that at Context is for King, right? Biology and science and physics, that those two are connected, and we're seeing that same thread through Beverly.
Yeah. I just did a Crusher convo for Beverly Crusher Day the other day, and we were talking a little bit about this episode. And, Beverly's in this episode. She's not by any means the focus of this episode, but what she does in this episode is super relevant. And it's just good use of the character, and not just using her as a token female, but using her as a smart female solving problems. I just always, it kind of reminded me of Beverly in The Chase. She's just contributing and bringing her part there. I did want to point out that just Jack and Beverly just even seem to have this shorthand. They can look at each other and know what's up. Like the whole, Picard asking for time with Jack and Beverly, kind of just looking at each other, and Beverly going, okay, he's okay with this. I'm going to be okay with this. And just really good acting. And you can tell these actors, even the new ones, Ed Spilliers, just kind of blended right in.
Yeah, she must have, as a parent, especially after losing Wesley to space, so to speak, kept him really close. I think that comes up in conversations during the season, but it's that type of shorthand that makes those comments so much more believable, because you'd think if you were around somebody all the time and she was super protective, that they would have that shorthand.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's like the Picard stuff going on here, like Picard and the cadets, which is a little bit of a flashback thing going on to like 5 years prior. And then there's Picard and Jack kind of going off from there and having their long talk in the holodeck. Kelvin, what did you think of that?
Well, ultimately, it was so heartbreaking, the kind of rejection of family when unknowingly a member of your family is sat in the room listening to it. So I really felt the heartbreak of Jack being in the background. But also before that, the speech from Picard, and maybe it is a little bit cheesy, but that Starfleet has always been the only family I've ever needed. I love that, because that's kind of how we feel in a way, really, with our love of Star Trek and even meeting each other as well, the way, Starfleet has brought us together as fans and friends. So I resonated with both in a very jarring way. What I didn't like about the scene were the actual cadets themselves. I found them quite annoying. And I don't think they were in right uniforms either, but that's another little thing that just gets on me. But yeah, the sentiment of the season was great. And in doing the rewatch as well for today's episode, I've had Patrick Stewart's voice with me all week listening to his memoir on Audible. So to hear him go off and pontificate like he always does was just quite comfortable. I've been doing it all week.
That was a little bit of a thing in the audio commentary as well. Is there like Patrick enjoyed shooting that scene so much because it's just kind of reminiscent of what happens to Patrick in real life. Is young people will come up and approach him, and although he'll act a little annoyed, he's eating up being able to kind of like talk to young people and be a little bit of that father figure and that mentor. I took the scene as Picard kind of saying that as a defense mechanism, because he probably does have that loss that he never did have a family, and he didn't have that, and of course the things that happened to him in Generations, that left over, and he's saying that to kind of be okay with it, but I don't think he meant it, and unfortunately those words were very hurtful to Jack.
Yeah, as you listening to you talk, I'm like, okay, so what's the no-win scenario with Picard and Jack? And I love when Jack is like, yeah, spending time with you, at the bar is fine, but I don't need this. And I absolutely loved when Picard's like, okay, that you maybe don't need this, but I need this. And that is where I feel like Picard has the no-win scenario, that it's like, I never had this family and now I do. What do I do with this? How am I going to win? Because I haven't been making pretty good progress with him so far. Like, something's got to change, and let me see if I can figure this out. I think their dynamic between the two of them, like they're both saying, yeah, I don't need you, but I need you, but I don't need you, but I need you. And I love that. And to your point, Kelvin, like Picard didn't know that he had family. So what else is he going to say? I totally see what you're saying. Like, I feel like, of course I have extended family, but yeah, I'm not a mom. So my Trek family, that's my chosen family. Like I need that family. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And it's a lot to take in too. I mean, Picard just, in the short time, Picard just found out he's a father, and he's also kind of trying to rectify his feelings toward Beverly for keeping that from him. This is all just happening. It's all fresh. I know we had week to week to process it, but in the time of the story, it's all within a day or so. So there's a lot there. But yeah, this is kind of like that mid-season thaw. Like the shock of having a kid is over, and now he's got to start to deal with it, which kind of brings me to the next topic, is Seven and Shaw. and Shaw and Picard, which are two different. The theme there is Shaw, I guess, but we see Seven and Shaw. We'll talk about them first. Kind of start to Shaw and thaw their relationship a little bit. As Seven gets empowered by Riker to kind of be this unofficial investigatory person to figure out where how to find this changeling that's on the ship. And so she's kind of off and running. And so she goes and sees Shaw because she needs to find somebody who was kind of familiar with the Dominion War and what happened with the changelings. And so what do we have to think about that little conversation, which I thought was like the first time I really started to like Shaw a little bit in his quarters. Mark?
Oh, that was so good. I loved it. The writing of this series, we all know every episode there's great lines, great dialogue. This was one of those moments. Now, when we first are introduced to Shaw, we're like, this guy needs to get blown out a serious airlock. But I think, and this is what, episode 4, right?
4.
At this point, we're like, okay, he can stick around. And it's that writing, it's what does it. And now, he's like the star of the convention circuit because we all love him. But yeah, the conversation with him and Seven was just chef's kiss.
Yeah. And Odo's bucket. We get that little call to Odo's bucket in there. Yeah, we only see, there's the one scene at the end of episode 2 where Picard claims Jack is his son, and Shaw just immediately pulls back and is like, okay, I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm going to go along. So that's our first glimmer that Shaw, okay, he might be okay in the long run. But this scene, there's a couple of them. He makes a lot of progress in this episode. I'm going to skip the middle part and kind of jump to the end where he's working on the nacelles with Seven. And quick little audio commentary, deep dive. That was all designed to be like Han Solo working on the Millennium Falcon. That was all inspired by Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, where he's opening the nacelles and he's underneath and he's got things in his mouth and everything. That's Han Solo.
Love it.
Terry Metalis and his,
awesome.
Deep love. And with that scene as well, David Blass was the production designer on building that set out. They actually got Todd Stashwick to go down there like hours before they were going to shoot and really get familiarized with everything and kind of figure out how they were going to shoot. And Jonathan Frakes, being the director on this episode, said it literally saved hours because of production time, because Stashwick knew what to do and how to do it. And they figured out the little beats of how he was going to play that scene by just familiarizing himself very well with the set. So let's talk about that. Oh, Amy. Sorry.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to move on because I still wanted to talk about Shaw and sort of his no-win scenario. I really felt it when he went into the bar to, talk to Picard. And you could feel his despair. Like he also is in a gravity well. He doesn't know how to get out.
That's the scene.
He doesn't know how to get out of his survivor's guilt, and that's the deep well. That is his no-win scenario. And I totally loved it where he's like, yeah, being an asshole overtook being charming or whatever. Like he knows he's deep and he can't get out. I loved that scene, how raw and vulnerable he was.
I love that Bev's a little, cavalier with the drugs.
Oh yeah,
that was a great nod to
Blaze and Bev. Yeah. Have any of you all? I mean, I guess I hope you have. You've all seen the movie Jaws, right?
Oh yeah,
long time ago.
Okay, no. Okay. Yes, a long time and a no. Okay,
so first off, too scary for me.
I forgot the guy that they hired to go hunt the shark. His name is Shaw as well. And deep in the movie Jaws, they are sitting down in the boat, whether it's nighttime, and Shaw recounts the story of being on the USS Independence during World War II, which was down in the South Pacific. And it had been, I think it carried the the bomb on it and the bomb. And so it's like it was on a top secret mission. It was radio silence, and it got torpedoed by after delivering the bomb. It had got a torpedo by a Japanese submarine, and they had to abandon ship, and they were in the water, and the waters were shark infested. And he talks about the trauma. This is a true story that they put into the movie. The story of the Independence is a true story. They wrote it into the movie Jaws. And he tells this no-win scenario of being in the water and watching sailors get pulled under one by sharks and how many people died before getting rescued. And the parallel to Wolf 359 and what Shaw went through was like, whoa. I mean, like, it's like one of those, like, that was a deep cut reference, and it's literally, it's like, I was remember being a little annoyed that Shaw was basically doing a Cisco when I first saw this. Taking it in that context, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've never seen Jaws, so I didn't get that context. But, you know, I only watched Star Trek, so I did get we've done Survivor's Guilt in Timeless with Harry Kane. Oh, we've done people hating Picard because he was Locutus with Cisco. So I saw those references and was not underwhelmed because the delivery of that scene by Stashwick was sensational. So the acting lifted the material to me. But listening to you just mention that kind of added that extra layer on. So maybe I'm getting new appreciation.
My last little place, I want to kind of switch it back to 7 here, is, of course, she goes and finds the bucket. And this might even be a little bit of a regeneration, I guess, because we're heading there anyway. But when she turns around, the changeling kills the other officer. Then the changeling vaporizes the bucket. 7 just kind of stares at him and hesitates. She probably could have killed the changeling right there if she had just focused on shooting him to begin with. But she hesitates for several seconds and then shoots him, and then he gets away.
That is not where I thought you were going with that scene, Christos, about regeneration. The bucket. Why did it have to be such a slap in the face of, here's another bucket? Odo used to use a bucket just like this. That bucket was a flower pot that was a present from Major Kira to Odo. It's not a bog standard, all changelings use this design of bucket. It just seemed like a slap in the face that was totally unnecessary to say, hey, it's somebody like Odo.
Well, it's like you had to go have something to go look for, right? I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's a little bit of a regeneration there. But my thing was like, wanted to call it the hesitation on 7's point, which could have ended the changeling right then and there, but she hesitated.
Okay, so since you're talking about it, that is my regeneration. If you see that. So I'm just gonna say, in that corridor, she shoots the changeling multiple times.
Hits him multiple times.
Yes, and it slithers away through the air duct. Then in engineering, right? The not Ensign LaForge shoots, and then multiple times again, but now this one dies. So
maybe
she only hits her once.
Oh,
well,
okay.
It was
point
later.
Blank.
It was later. So maybe she realized and turned the phaser up.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I was going to say. That was going to be my, let's make it make sense. Maybe it was a higher setting. But that's about the only way it makes sense. And being point blank, there's like less energy dissipation, I guess. I don't know if that's canon or not. That the further you are away,
I don't think that's
the more dissipation there might be.
Science worthy.
Well, not Romulan plasma torpedoes lose their effectiveness the further away you are from them. So Christos is right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with the
Joe
setting.
Keegan here.
Maybe in the corridor it was on stun, and then now she's business and it's on kill.
Well, yeah, and she knew right when she was putting that gun to changeling flesh, LaForge's head that okay, this is my changeling, and she knew that whatever it was set on in that hallway wasn't enough, so maybe it was just higher. All right, so that was a kind of a big regeneration there that we just accidentally slid into. So let's get to assimilations and regenerations. And I will. I'll kick this one off because I wrote it, I guess. I mean, Vatic and the Borg Queen, and it's very becomes very well. We know she's the Borg Queen now, but let's face it, going back and rewatching, there's so many signs. But when Vatic cuts her hand off and it goes into communication with the mysterious figure, we'll call it, it becomes very apparent that Vatic is kept. She's not like she's the number 2 villain, not the number 1 villain, and that was our big revelation there. And she's basically under orders. But I kind of thought that was kind of cool to realize that there's another layer to the story got revealed through that. So that was an assimilation for me.
I just really like the scene at the end as they're escaping the nebula, and Riker uses the tractor beam to throw the rock at the Shrike. So, even the dialogue, did you just throw a rock at them? You're damn right I did.
Yeah.
But I remember that because I used to play, I think I may have mentioned this previously, but I used to play Starfleet Academy on the PC. And that was a tactic I used to use. I used to use the tractor beam and throw things at ships. So to actually see that in real Trek, it made me feel like a little 15-year-old again. I loved it.
Well, that's cool.
And very cool. I like that it was a throwback to episode 2 where the Ilios gets thrown at the Titan. And it's kind of like Riker's payback for that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
I was a big fan of the music of this episode. I mean, we've talked about it before. The score for this whole last season, just beautiful. Very cinematic.
Stephen Barton. Yeah, it was so good. It's just good from episode 1 to 10, but there's some very good beats in this episode for sure. Just like the music perfectly tells us what we should be feeling.
Yeah. So after watching this again and having some time and remembering that this season we got a conclusion of quite a few characters that we didn't know we needed, i.e. Shelby or, Ro. And I just realized we get a conclusion of a story in this episode with our encounter at Farpoint Space Aliens. And I didn't recognize it at the time, but we are getting the conclusion of this story of the space aliens are reproducing. They've got little babies. Like, this is a healthy species that the crew of the Enterprise was able to save successfully. And that is just a beautiful conclusion to this story that, again, I didn't know I needed, but I'm so glad that they did that. Kelvin?
So a question there. I know the visual similarities between the space babies looked like Farpoint Station. And Christos, you may be able to answer this. Maybe it was said in the commentary. Were they supposed to be baby Farpoint stations? Did you look at it and think they're the same species? That's where they've come from? Because they even referenced space-dwelling life forms as Farpoint earlier. It was almost like they forgot to make that connection and say it's the same ones, because it just seemed very random when Picard said, "Oh, Farpoint." I would have thought Tin Man or the alien that stuck to the Enterprise, thinking it was they were more famous than Farpoint. But did we all think that they were supposed to be the same species?
I looked very closely at the aliens when they had the same bottom of the tentacles. Yeah, that feathery stuff. The heads were different, but it's reimagined. I mean, how many times have the Klingons been reimagined, or, any species, and all the Trekkies get up in arms? Oh, they can't do this. Well, in my book, because they did reference it, and in my headcanon, yes, those are the Encounter at Farpoint Space Aliens. And because you see that they are bringing back characters, this is a character that they're bringing back. And
great. Yeah. I agree with you. I've planted it into the headcanon, the Farpoint babies.
I was just going to point out, you kind of touch into those. Sorry, I was having some audio problems there for a hot second there. I was going to point out just two things that kind of relates back to the aliens. First off, it's kind of ambiguous whether they are the exact same aliens or species or not. The scene with Riker, Crusher, Picard, and Drac. First off, that's so very Star Trek, right? I kind of referenced it earlier. They're just sciencing their way, and they're, Picard and Beverly especially are just so, and Jack, they're just so excited. And Picard, like Far Apart mission, and like to Amy's point, that's so great that they just reference their premiere episode and tie it that far back. And when Beverly talks about let's do what we've spent our entire lives getting great at, like, yeah, Farpoint never would have happened. They wouldn't necessarily know what to do here. And that's just, that's one of the best scenes, I think, in all of that season of Picard. And then I love the very end where, that the babies are born and they're everywhere and everyone's having this euphoric moment. And Beverly says to seek out new life, which is right out of the, 1966 Star Trek. But then Riker goes, "Let's boldly get the hell out of here." It's just like, this episode ends with all the feels, and it's just pretty cool.
So. Isn't that from Archer's speech when they're forming the Federation? Doesn't he?
Yeah, I think they call it the Captain's Charter.
So we'll move on to our regenerations. I was like, after rewatching this, especially, I'm like reminded all that damn hype over the portal weapon, and then Vadic just dumps it out into space. And we never hear from it again. Did y'all think that when they disconnected it and threw it into space that maybe we were going to come back to it somehow? Someone was going to pick that up? Or just really truly think it was done?
Not really. I think it did its job. It obviously had the big impact with the Raffi scene and the terrorist attack, but kind of the cool space battle in episode 3. So I think it had done its job. I think if they kept it, it would have been even more of a no-win scenario because it's quite a decent weapon. So to engineer it into the plot that they had to jettison it in order to go into the nebula, I think kind of served the story overall a little bit. But yeah, bit of a waste because it is pretty cool.
I bet it get picked up by the Collectors Guild.
We'll see it in Lower Decks soon.
So watching this again, still and again, I'm confused over what Jack is. And I've seen the episode, or, I've seen the series, how it ends. Okay. How does he have this? Oh, Borg. And then how are the Borg and the Changeling connected? Like, why is Vadic so scared?
They're just...
Is that the Borg Queen?
Yeah, the Borg Queen actually, they formed some sort of alliance at some point.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. And somehow the Borg Queen has some power of some sort to it, which is really kind of hard to fathom because the Borg Queen's so beat up and the Borg ship is so beat up. But somehow...
And the Borg Queen's a man when she's talking.
Yeah. But what was said in the audio commentary, and it should have been a slap in the face, at the very end when Jack is washing his face in the sink, it's right out of the beginning of First Contact when Picard goes to the sink. And they said they even used the same lens and the same timing as when they filmed First Contact. It was literally a recreation. And I also found out, thanks to Terry Metalis, that they made Ed Spilliers wax his chest for that scene.
Oh.
Thank you, Terry.
Quickly, add that to the assimilation list.
Yeah, cutting that to the red vines in the background, and you hear Beverly's voice. That they did confirm that was Gates in that episode. Her voice. It's like, yeah, there was so much so much foreshadowing of the Borg. That we were all guessing the Borg by then. Wasn't this the episode that had the subtitle that quickly got corrected? Yeah. Because it was ruined for most of us at that point. But anyways.
Yeah. I think you broke that spoiler on this show, Christos. I remember at the time. And me and Mark, we couldn't believe it. We were like, oh my God.
Sorry. I had one more little regeneration, and you guys may feel differently, but at this point and this might be how telling because of our actual no-win scenario, but theme here. But are we leaning too much into the Kobayashi Maru? And think about it, at this point, I believe season 4 Discovery had an episode called Kobayashi. We had the Kobayashi Maru in episode 6 of Prodigy, and then we had this. Like, do we have Kobayashi Maru fatigue?
I don't. I feel like it's built into the training for all the Starfleet officers, so it would make sense that it'd be referenced in some way or another. during the different things. I don't know. There's not one every season, thankfully. That would get a little redundant, but I don't know. Having each show have their own specific episode, that's fine.
I think it did less of tying the shows together in a nice way. It just seemed a little clumsy. And it's another example of, we talk about they all have storylines about ships being taken over. Again, another example of the different shows didn't talk to each other in the production process. So having nothing said about Kobayashi Maru since Star Trek 09 to get it all across the franchise in 1 year, it wasn't like it was a celebration or a nod to Wrath of Khan. It wasn't in an anniversary year. It was nothing that clever. It just all came at the same time. So yeah, I agree with Christos. I think it was a bit tired.
Yeah, Amy?
I'm gonna disagree on this one because how Picard the series does this one, it's a character no-win scenario where the Kobayashi Maru is like a test and like, oh, how are we going to get out of this one? So when we see it in Picard and in this episode, like those characters, that's relatable. I can understand Riker in his sorrow over loss and death. Like I can't really relate to Captain Kirk trying to figure out how am I going to save the Kobayashi Maru. So I think Picard, to your point, it is done a lot, but I think Picard has done it the best.
Yeah, and I think my comment was, I don't think I was critiquing any one show for using it, because they all used it well. It all made sense. It all fit. But just all in the same year, basically in a 12-month period, to have 3 different Star Trek series kind of lean back on the Kobayashi Maru one way or another, it just seemed like, oh, you guys should be talking a little bit more and coordinating what you're doing. I think that's what Kelvin was trying to say a little bit too. So
yeah, agreed.
That's my regeneration, not that it was misused in any way. It obviously fits really well in this episode. All right, are we done here with regenerations? I think so. So let's move on into some trivia. Amy, why don't you kick us off?
All right. Well, while discussing the Changeling with Seven, Captain Shaw hands Seven a pad that includes the bucket and a picture in DS9's Odo. I saw that.
Specifically a season 1 or season 2 Odo, because he's got the low scoop on
his vest. Okay. It looked very old. So thank you for clarifying.
The little audio commentary ad here was, first off, Jonathan Frakes just called out Rene Auberjonois for what a great actor he was in the audio commentary, and how wonderful it always was to work with him. And then secondly, Terry Matalas was talking how they wanted to use a picture of him from the TV series Benson, but he got told no.
That's funny.
Shaw also reveals that he is from Chicago, Illinois. The actor who portrays Shaw, Todd Stashwick, is from Chicago as well. We love that dipshit.
Yeah. Stashwick did take the time to reveal that he was born in the same hospital as Harrison Ford, as they were talking about the Millennium Falcon type Han Solo connection. So a little more trivia there. Kelvin.
So the stardate that was used in the Picard's Admiral's log is 78183.10, and that helps us date when the episodes took place, about 37 years after Encounter at Farpoint.
Very cool.
Which was 41153.7.
Of course you would know that, Kelvin.
I don't know how they got that far along. They kind of broke the logic that they made in the original the Berman era, I guess. Here, the Changeling bucket discovered hidden behind the lighting fixture is a visual callback to the overloading phaser in Captain Kirk's quarters found behind the red alert indicator during the events of TOS, the Conscience of the King.
Do you know, before we move on from that point, do you know what it actually reminded me of? is in the undiscovered country when they're looking for the uniforms, and Scotty hears the vibrating panel and finds it in the observation round. So yeah, that was my callback.
Yeah. That was the dining room in Star Trek 6. It was the TNG observation lounge set that they were using.
You're so right.
Yeah, we could just do a whole episode of watching Star Trek 6 and pointing out where in TNG set they are. They really used.
Funny.
As so many scenes get reused from TNG in that movie. It's great though.
The next bit of trivia: at approximately 10 minutes, when Seven is searching for the changeling, a Vulcan strategy game, Calto, can be seen on the desk. This was frequently played by Tuvok, Harry Kim, Icheb, and even Seven once during the 7-year run of Star Trek Voyager.
Yes. We also see Seven playing it with Rafi at the very end of season 1 in the last scene. When they're holding hands and playing Calto.
Yes, that's right.
So there's another reference to it there.
I bet that's not in the rules of the Vulcan game. There is to be no emotion, no love, no flirting during Calto.
Yes.
I know. It's kind of like a chess type of serious game. Concentration is key.
The Arcanus Lager sign on the wall in 10 forward is exactly the same as the one shown in the bar during Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, when Dr. McCoy is trying to charter a space flight. So that's really cool.
That is cool.
Just listening to the audio commentary, that was very, very, very intentional, of course. But Jonathan Frakes was talking about how much he hated it because, as a director and shooting, he said it was very distracting, and it just kind of kept on distracting him when they were trying to do their work in that set. And they did go further to say, yeah, we know all the criticism about that set being used so much in season 3, but it was a set that we owned and it was paid for. So they basically they called it out like that. Reusing that set so much was just a money-saving tactic. But
one more tie into Arcanus. So the Arcanus system was the Klingon disputed system that started the Klingon War in DS9, and it was the revelation that the changelings had got into the Klingon Empire. So it was the changelings in Picard season 3 and the word Arcanus coming on screen was a great reference to changelings, Klingon Civil War in DS9.
We'll get our final thoughts from everybody and how you feel this ranked up against our previous 2 series of our Kobayashi Maru series here. So what did we think about this episode and how it ranks against the other 2 we've done in this series? And we'll start with Kelvin.
It's really hard because again, we select these episodes for the themes so specifically that they all have their own joyous kind of individuality to them. This particular episode of Picard for me is always a little bit bittersweet because it takes me to the moment in time when I watched it. So it was when we got back from the cruise a couple of years ago. So I had all of that kind of post-convention, I miss everybody. But it is acknowledged to be one of the better episodes of season 3, which is obviously an amazing season anyway. So it is such a good episode. But do I prefer it to Prodigy, Kobayashi, which is so nostalgic, and TNG's Thine Own Self, which is so classic? Yes, I'm going to say that this episode, I would say, is the best of those 3.
I am in full agreement. They are good, and that Prodigy one is good. The Thine Own Self, I don't know, that's sort of on the bottom, which is surprising because everyone knows I love TNG. But this episode, as I said, is so relatable. Like these no-win scenarios that Shaw, Picard, Riker, like they're all going through is so relatable. And you can feel how deep and sad and no win that they are in. And like we get there in our lives. And like what you were saying, Christos, that coming together, and Picard's like, you're with your family and you can survive anything if you're with your people. And it's just so well put up. Like You can have anything Kobayashi Maru, just get with your people and just work it out day by day, hour by hour, and you will survive. And you will survive with your people. Like, that's what this episode is. I love that we get this, and it is definitely the best Kobayashi Maru in this series.
I feel like the Kobayashi Maru series, or at least the idea that runs through the course of most of the Star Trek series, is one of the most Star Trek-y ideas, right? It is something that is very inspirational, very relatable to, as Amy was saying, our own lives, where sometimes the weight of the world, the weight of our problems seem so insurmountable that we don't know how we're going to get through it, right? And so, we have these stories that we can look to as inspiration to get through for ourselves. And so I think they're really important. When you compare it to the others that we've discussed so far, the other two were great. I really enjoyed the other two, but I think this has the most of the most no-win scenarios in it. And also, it's just a really, really solid episode. So I have to agree with the rest of the team that this is probably the best we've seen yet of the Kobayashi series.
Yeah, and that kind of echoes what my 2 cents were going to be. I like the other two. Obviously, Prodigy episode's great. Got to see Beverly in it, so I was really happy. And we get to see. I think Dino and Self is where Troy's doing the bridge officers test, and that was really cool to see that. But this is a movie, man. This is like production, the cinematic. Everything hits with this episode, from the cinematography to the special effects to the writing to the conflict to the drama. It's at 57 minutes plus the previous 3 episodes. It's part of a big movie, and yeah, it just, everything about this just kind of shadows the other. It shadows the other 2 episodes. It's like this is textbook Kobayashi Maru.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Zilagis, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev, a Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark, and Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
That BQN promo is fabulous when the hosts need to go to the bathroom. So thank you. Right.
Agreed.
Next week, we are continuing with our Architects series with part 2. And we're all so excited because we're going to do a deep dive on everybody's favorite, Joe Minosky.
I'm so excited for this. I'm looking forward to doing some research on Joe Minosky.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to keep us busy for the week.
Yeah, I would. What should we do here? I mean, I would maybe suggest we go to Memory Alpha and just like look him up and get a listing of his works, so we kind of know what we need to dive into, and that'll help us out and probably help our listeners out a little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and then if you want to go back and see what part 1 was, listeners, back in our logs there, we covered DC Fontana earlier this year, which was a really fun episode to do. We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also reach us at AllGoodPod on Twitter or X and Blue Sky. Please follow the network on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram at BQN Podcast. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us there by searching their master feed. So, Amy, where can people find you when you're not seeking out new life?
Well, when I am not doing that, you can find me here on the network where I'm co-hosting Union Federation, where we talk about the new Star Trek coming out. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but favorite place in our BQN Collective Facebook group. And Mark, where can people find you when you're not cutting off your hand to speak to a greater power?
It would have to be the left one. I need the right one.
Okay.
I'm right-handed. Anyway.
We all know what you meant.
So, when I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. You can find me on Cinema Z. I might have mentioned already that I watch movies and have a movie podcast that you all might enjoy. I'm also on Blue Sky at MW207. And Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not holding hands with James as you're playing a game of Calto?
Oh, that's nice. When I'm not doing that, you can find me on the socials at Kelvin's Timeline or in the BQN Collective Facebook group. And finally, Christos, where can people find you when you haven't got residue dripping out of your bucket?
You can find me also in the BQN Collective there on Facebook, on pretty much all socials at Greek Geek SD, or over on Steam at Greek Geek SD, as I just started playing Star Trek Infinite, which I'm not going to lie, it's hard. But I think I'm going to be getting together a little What's the T-Bev episode here in the next week or so, where Jason Anderson and Davey and I will be talking about Star Trek Infinite a little bit. So everyone's wanting to talk about that a little bit. So we'll be heading there after we've all had a chance to play a little bit. Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and a written review. That helps others find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to our very own Mark White for our artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We'll add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind monthly roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us
as we continue to search out
all good things.